A 14-year-old boy is murdered in a bathtub, surrounded by wildflowers arranged in a bizarre ritual. Just days later, a young teacher dies in a similar manner, despite no connection between the two victims. When a third body appears and a witness suddenly disappears, police realize the killer had been planning this for months. But the real horrifying secret lies in a dark secret buried on the seashore. Around 11 p.m. that night, single mother Julie returned home after a date with her boyfriend Gary to find her 14-year-old son, Luke, dead in the bathtub. Several wildflowers were scattered around the body, as if by some ritual. Initially, Julie thought Luke had committed suicide. However, after police arrived, they confirmed that Luke had been strangled to death using a rope. After killing him, the perpetrator moved the body into the bathtub and scattered wildflowers around it. Additionally, police discovered 2 footprints of an adult male on Julie's kitchen window. The killer must have entered the house through the kitchen window. At the time of the crime, Julie's daughter Laura was asleep in her bedroom and heard nothing. According to Julie's recollection, she finished her date with Gary at 11 o'clock at night. Gary was a sound engineer at a bar. Because he needed to work overtime that night, after dropping Julie off at the bus stop, he returned to the bar where he worked. Julie's reason for believing Luke did something reckless was because he had been in a terrible mood for the past 6 months. It turned out that he had a close friend named Tommy. Tommy was passionate about photography, and he often went to the nearby beach with Luke to take pictures. One day 6 months ago, while the two were taking pictures and playing on the beach as usual, Tommy accidentally fell into the sea and was swept away by the current. He ultimately lost his life. After Tommy's death, Luke was consumed by guilt and remained gloomy and sad all day. After hearing Julie's testimony, Inspector Vera, who was in charge of the murder case, quickly narrowed down a clear suspect: Tommy's father, Davy. A year earlier, he had been imprisoned for intentional assault. He had only been released from prison a week prior to his release. Vera suspected that Davy had blamed Luke for Tommy's accidental death, which led him to murder the boy. Even more suspicious was that a witness had seen Davy near Julie's house before the crime. Vera and Joe then went to Davy's residence to investigate. Since his release from prison, he had been living in an abandoned stone house near the beach where Tommy drowned. He was still tormented by guilt over his son's death. However, when questioned by Vera, he vehemently denied killing him. Regarding his presence near Julie's house before the crime, he claimed he wanted to ask Luke why Tommy had inexplicably fallen into the sea. Vera clearly didn't believe Davy's story. After returning to the police station, she still considered him the prime suspect. She had officers secretly monitor him, hoping he would make a mistake. Suddenly, a second murder occurred here. This time, the victim was Lily, a young, beautiful girl with short blonde hair. She was a trainee teacher at the nearby town's high school. Her body was found in a coastal swamp. The cause of death was also strangulation with a rope. The time of death was the previous night. The police also found some wildflowers around her body, suggesting that the killer was the same person who murdered both her and Luke. Additionally, a small amount of car paint was found under her fingernails. It's possible the killer tied her up before using a car to take her to the beach to commit the murder. The people who discovered her body were a group of 4 birdwatchers with some local reputation: Peter, Samuel, Clive, and Gary. Because they all enjoyed birdwatching on the coast, the 4 had become close friends. They were known as the Group of 4 Birdwatchers. Peter and Lily taught at the same high school. Peter said Lily had only been doing her internship there for a few months. Furthermore, there was a significant age difference between them, and they taught different subjects, so there was no interaction between them. Peter's wife, Felicity, had a past relationship with Lily. It turned out they owned a vacant beachfront house. Lily had recently wanted to move to a different house. The day before the crime, Felicity had shown Lily their house. Lily was extremely pleased with the beachfront house and said that every detail perfectly matched her taste. She planned to sign the lease the next day, but then she was murdered. Except for Peter and Felicity, the rest of the Group of 4 birdwatchers didn't know Lily. When Vera rushed to the scene, she recognized Gary, the bar's sound engineer. Gary was Julie's boyfriend. Later, the police investigation revealed that Luke and Lily had no connection whatsoever. They were strangers and had no mutual acquaintances. Thus, Gary became the only person with any connection to both cases. He was one of the witnesses who discovered Lily's body. Therefore, Vera focused her questioning on him. He stated that he was asleep at home when both cases occurred. On the night Luke was murdered, he had a date with Julie. After their date and dropping her off at the bus stop, he went home to rest. Vera shrewdly grasped the problem in Gary's statement. According to Julie's previous account, after dropping her off at the bus stop, he returned to work at the bar. However, he said that after dropping Julie off, he went home to rest. Therefore, one of them was lying. Vera immediately sent someone to the bar, where Gary worked, to inquire about the situation and retrieve the surveillance footage from the bus station on the night Luke was murdered. The surveillance footage showed that after dropping Julie off at the bus station, realization, Gary rushed in the opposite direction from his home. The bar staff confirmed that Gary did not return to the bar for overtime that night. In other words, during the time Luke was murdered, Gary neither went home nor returned to the bar. Could he have gone ahead of Julie and gone to her house to murder Luke? The question is, why would he want to kill his girlfriend's son? Unable to find any clues, Vera's anger grew. At this point, Julie called, saying she had found a strange envelope in her mailbox. The recipient was Luke, but inside there was no letter, only a dried flower. This reminded Vera of the wildflowers scattered beside the bodies in the two cases. Perhaps this dried flower, like the wildflowers beside the bodies, was some kind of ritual performed by the killer during the assault. If that were true, had Lily ever received a similar envelope? Vera then led her team to the apartment Lily had rented to thoroughly examine her personal belongings. Sure enough, they found an envelope just like the one. Inside, there was no letter, only a dried flower. In addition, Vera found a detective novel in Lily's room. The author was Samuel, the writer of suspense stories in the group of 4 birdwatchers. On the end papers of the novel, there was a handwritten signature by Samuel that read, "Keep in touch, I'm always here." It seemed he was lying too. When he discovered Lily's body, he had claimed he didn't know her. If that's the case, why would he leave such an ambiguous comment on the novel Lily was reading? Of course, what made Vera even more suspicious was the apartment Lily rented. It was a high-end apartment with a rent of £80 a week, yet she was only a trainee teacher and her salary was extremely low. Her family's financial situation was also average. With her actual income, she couldn't possibly afford such an expensive rent. Joe immediately investigated Lily's finances and discovered that for the past 6 months, her bank account had received deposits of £300 almost every week. 3 weeks ago, after a single deposit of £600, there were no further deposits. It seemed Lily had a lucrative part-time job. After they left Lily's apartment, Vera took the novel they had found in her room to see Samuel. He remained single and lived alone in a suburban villa. Upon seeing Vera, he was clearly a little flustered. Instinctively, he tucked a stack of novel manuscripts that had been on his desk into a drawer. After Vera presented him with his signed novel, he still insisted he didn't know Lily. It turned out that fans frequently wrote to him, confiding their troubles and asking for signed books. Out of consideration for his fans, he would send a copy of his novel to the address on the envelope and personally sign it with a polite message. "Keep in touch, I'm always here." Samuel assumed Lily was probably a fan who had written to him. The signed novel in her hand was one he had sent her by mail. He then pulled out a box specifically used for collecting fan mail. Sure enough, they found Lily's letter inside. In the letter, she confided to him that she was in love with a married man 30 years her senior. She seemed to adore him immensely. This man paid her a sum of money every week as compensation. She felt extremely confused about this relationship. She didn't know if it was love or a transaction, so she wrote to Samuel to express her sadness. However, she didn't reveal the man's name or occupation in the letter. After reading Lily's letter to Samuel, Vera finally found a clue to the case. For 6 months, Lily had been secretly seeing a married man. She could afford to rent a luxury apartment, not because she found a lucrative part-time job, but because the man gave her £300 a week as compensation. 3 weeks ago, this man gave her £600 and intended to end their relationship so she could return to her family. Perhaps she wanted to continue with him and clung to him relentlessly, which led to her murder. The problem is, assuming she died because of a romantic relationship, why would the killer kill Luke, who had nothing to do with it? Could Luke have accidentally encountered the killer and Lily? After Vera left Samuel's residence and returned to the police station, she received a new clue. The police found a burnt-out car in a suburban area. They discovered Lali's shoes in the trunk. The paint residue on her fingernail was from this car. The registered owner of the car had been traveling abroad for 2 weeks and had not returned. This suggests that the killer stole the car and then used it to transport Lily to the coastal swamp where she was murdered. Finally, the killer burned the car to destroy evidence. Besides Lily's shoes, the police also found an unburned piece of fog netting in the trunk. Fog netting is a type of netting used by hunters or ornithologists to catch birds. The group of 4 birdwatchers also frequently used this type of tool to catch bird specimens for observation and study. After comparing the wounds, the police confirmed that the weapon used to strangle Luke and Lily was this fog netting. Based on this, Vera deduced that the killer of Luke and Lily was one of the 4 birdwatchers. If this deduction was true, then one person with a motive for the crime was Peter. He was over 60 years old, married, and formerly a renowned botanist throughout the United Kingdom. He had many admirers. Importantly, he was 30 years older than Lily. Of the 4 people who were birdwatching, only Peter's characteristics perfectly matched the description of the man Lily had written in her letter. Furthermore, the killer's actions of sending a package containing dried flowers to the victim before the assault, as well as scattering wildflowers around the body after the murder were consistent with Peter's identity as a botanist. Vera and Joe split up to investigate Peter's background. Vera went to the school where he taught to meet him in person, while Joe rushed to his house to question his wife Felicity about any potential conflict between them. Neither of them gained any information. When questioned by Vera, Peter maintained that he wasn't close to Lily and that the person she mentioned in her letter had no connection to him. When Felicity learned that Lily might be Peter's mistress, she appeared indifferent and stated that she and her husband were quite independent and didn't interfere in each other's private lives. If the police wanted to find out more personal information about Peter, they could ask Clive. Besides enjoying painting and birdwatching, he was also extremely passionate about botany. Therefore, he often slept over at Peter's house, and they would discuss and exchange knowledge about birds, flowers, and plants. After questioning Peter and Felicity, Vera and Joe went to Clive's office. He was still single. He had lived with his mother since childhood. His parents divorced, and his mother passed away from illness 3 years ago. Since then, he had felt terrified of living alone. Therefore, he frequently slept over at the homes of the other 2 members of the 4-person birdwatching group, Peter and Clive. Hearing this, Vera asked him why, if the 4 birdwatchers were all very close friends, he only slept over at Peter and Clive's houses. Why did he spend the night at Gary's house? He explained that Gary was simultaneously dating several girlfriends, including Julie. Sometimes, he'd have affairs with 2 or 3 different girlfriends in a single night. Clive worried about Gary's chaotic private life and the possibility of germs everywhere in his house. Therefore, Clive never dared to sleep there. His words dispelled Vera's suspicions about Gary. On the night Luke was murdered, after dropping Julie off at the bus stop, Gary rushed back in the opposite direction from his house. Vera initially thought Gary might have gone to Julie's house first to kill Luke. Now, thinking back, this was probably just him rushing off to his next date after finishing his date with Julie. Furthermore, something beyond Vera's understanding was Clive's belief that there was no romantic relationship between Peter and Lily. In his view, a renowned botanist like Peter wouldn't possibly have an affair with a young woman in her 20s, putting himself at risk. Clive's testimony deeply disappointed Vera. If there was nothing between Peter and Lily, then he couldn't be the killer. So who was the married man dating Lily? Could it be another suspect not yet under police scrutiny? Seeing that the investigation was about to end completely, Vera took out a photo of Luke and asked Clive if they knew each other. Clive not only knew Luke but also Tommy. It turned out that when he was shooting at the beach, he often saw Tommy and Luke taking pictures together. Sometimes there was even a little girl about their age present. One day 6 months ago, Clive saw Tommy fall into the sea while they were taking pictures on the beach, along with his camera. By the time Clive ran over to try and save him, it was too late. Tommy had already been swept away by the current. It was Clive who provided the witness testimony to the police. The police then confirmed that Tommy's death had nothing to do with Luke. After questioning Clive, Vera was extremely upset. His words had almost completely refuted her previous conclusions. She had initially thought Gary and Peter were the prime suspects, but the current evidence suggested they were not the culprits. Furthermore, the police hadn't found any connection between the 2 victims. Could it be that Luke and Lily's deaths weren't caused by the same person? This possibility wasn't entirely impossible. There was actually another suspect in Luke's murder case, Tommy's father, Davy. However, since Davy was under police surveillance when Lily was murdered, he absolutely couldn't be the killer. Vera returned to the police station to retrieve documents related to Tommy's case. She confirmed that Clive's testimony was entirely true. Then, she went alone to find Luke's sister, Laura. Clive once mentioned that when Luke and Tommy were taking pictures playing on the beach, there was sometimes a little girl about their age there. This girl was obviously Laura. It seemed that she and Tommy were quite familiar with each other. Vera wanted to find out more details about Tommy's case from Laura because she vaguely felt that the 2 recent murders were related to Tommy's case 6 months ago. When facing Vera's questioning alone, Laura's mood was extremely bad. With a woman's intuition, Vera immediately saw that the relationship between Laura and Tommy was not normal. Under questioning, Laura finally admitted that she and Tommy had been in love. However, she was not present at the scene when he met with the accident. Later, she heard Luke recount that when the 2 of them had an argument, Tommy fell into the sea and died. The reason for their argument seemed to be that Tommy had accidentally taken a picture of an older man and a young girl doing something suspicious. Luke hoped Tommy would delete these pictures to avoid trouble, but Tommy planned to use these sensitive photos to blackmail them. Luke disagreed with Tommy's plan, so he immediately snatched the camera and threw it into the sea. Tommy wanted to get his camera back, so he jumped into the sea and was swept away by the current. After this incident, Luke couldn't bear the psychological pressure and told Laura the whole truth. He also threatened that if she dared to tell anyone, he would publicly expose her and Tommy's secret use of illegal substances. That's why she didn't tell the police face the truth about Tommy's death. Her testimony finally helped Vera find the connection between the two victims. The girl in the sensitive photo taken by Tommy's camera was undoubtedly Lily. Luke stole the camera because he wanted to prevent Tommy from blackmailing Lily. At this point, the case once again returns to the starting point of Lily's murder. Who was the man Lily was dating? Unfortunately, Tommy's camera had sunk to the bottom of the sea, making it impossible to recover the photos. In desperation, Vera borrowed a similar camera from the police department's propaganda office and went to the beach where Tommy had taken the pictures. She then looked through the camera, taking pictures and searching everywhere. To her delight, she managed to capture Felicity standing at the window of a house overlooking the sea. Only at this moment did Vera confirm that Peter was lying. Clive had been wrong. The married man dating Lily was none other than Professor Peter, a renowned botanist throughout the United Kingdom. Lily had just entered the field of education when she met this academic star at her school. She admired him immensely and willingly became his secret lover. He, in return, paid her £300 a week. Perhaps psychologically he couldn't accept the relationship, or maybe he was simply bored. 3 weeks ago, after paying her £600, he intended to end it, but she refused and clung to him. She even used the pretext of renting a house to approach his wife and pressure him. To escape her harassment, he sought an opportunity to murder her. Luke was killed because he had seen a compromising photo of Peter and Lily. Driven by a desire to conceal his relationship with Lily, he broke into Julie's house and killed Luke. Just as Vera was investigating the case, Felicity proactively provided the police with crucial evidence. When Joe revealed to her that Lily might be Peter's mistress, she appeared unconcerned. But after he left, she suddenly remembered something Lily had said when she rented out the house. Lily had said that every detail of the house's decor perfectly matched her taste. Therefore, Felicity suspected that Lily and her husband truly had feelings for each other. Their secret rendezvous were most likely in the house overlooking the sea. Furthermore, during their clandestine meetings, they had even arranged the furniture according to Lily's preferences. Thinking this, Felicity went to the house and searched. She found a woman's ring on the bed in the bedroom. She immediately handed the ring over to the police. The police quickly confirmed that the ring belonged to Lily. This at least confirmed the illicit relationship between Peter and Lily. Vera immediately took the ring to confront him directly. Faced with this irrefutable evidence, he had to admit to having an affair with Lily. They had frequently engaged in secret intimacy in his house overlooking the sea. He was once a renowned botanist throughout the United Kingdom, an academic star admired by thousands, but now he had fallen into the status of an ordinary town high school teacher. The vast difference in status left him deeply disillusioned. Each day, he could only find solace in birdwatching. The appearance of Lily filled this void. She adored him intensely. Each time he conquered her, he felt as if he had rediscovered the pleasure of conquering the world. However, as time passed, an indescribable feeling of affection arose within him. He felt guilty about his clandestine relationship with her, both towards her and his wife. Therefore, after maintaining the relationship for 6 months, he paid her a sum of money and officially broke up with her. Although she disagreed, she didn't take any drastic action. After learning that the police had placed him on the list of prime suspects in the murders of Lily and Luke, he was utterly astonished. He vehemently denied killing Lily and claimed he didn't even know Luke. Vera was impatient with his excuses and intended to take him directly to the police station for questioning. Unexpectedly, upon learning the specific time Luke was murdered, he provided Vera with an alibi. He stated that he was in Madrid, Spain, attending an academic conference on the night Luke was murdered, and therefore had no time to commit the crime. After confirming his alibi, Vera was completely stunned. Not only did he not have time to murder Luke, but he also didn't know that Luke and Tommy had secretly taken photos of him and Lily engaging in illicit activities. Peter had no clear alibi for Lily's murder. However, upon reflection, Lily was young and beautiful, and it seemed unlikely she would be pursuing a man over 60. Therefore, he had no reason to murder her. Vera realized her judgment was wrong, so she angrily returned to the police station, ready to scold all the officers involved in the case. Unexpectedly, before she even arrived, she received a call from Luke's mother saying that another envelope containing dried flowers had been found in her mailbox. She couldn't contact Laura, and it seemed something had happened to her. At the same time, Davy, who was under police surveillance, had escaped, and his whereabouts were unknown. Vera suddenly felt something was amiss. In the 2 previous murders, the killer had moved Luke's body into the bathtub and dumped Lily's body in the swamp. Based on this, Vera deduced that besides scattering wildflowers beside the bodies and sending packages to the victims before committing the crimes, another habit of the killer was to commit assaults in places with water. Therefore, she mobilized all the police officers to search all the swamps and riverbanks in the area. Sure enough, the police quickly found a body by a river. The victim was Davy, who had escaped police surveillance. He had been struck hard on the head, resulting in his death. From the evidence at the scene, it was clear he was not the kidnapper of Laura. Perhaps he was trying to save her from the kidnapper, and as a result, he was attacked and killed. Vera speculated that Davy probably knew Tommy had once loved Laura, so he wanted to ask her about Tommy's situation before the boy died. Unexpectedly, he witnessed her being abducted. He then chased after the kidnapper to the riverbank, but was unfortunately attacked. Adding Tommy's drowning 6 months earlier, this complex and mysterious case had resulted in 4 deaths. Now, Laura's whereabouts were unknown. Vera, with her hot temper, felt like a pressure cooker with flames burning under her bottom for 3 hours, ready to explode at any moment. After forcing herself to calm down, she reorganized the clues. The killer had used a fog net to strangle Luke and Lily. Her initial guess was that the culprit was one of the 4 birdwatchers. However, Peter, who was connected to Lily, and Gary, who had some connection to Luke, were essentially ruled out as suspects. Assuming Vera's guess was that the real killer was one of the 4 birdwatchers, then it would be Clive or Samuel. At this point, Vera suddenly remembered that when she first visited Samuel, he seemed a little flustered and instinctively put a stack of novel manuscripts that had been on his desk into a drawer. Vera immediately took Joe to Samuel's house again. He wasn't home and couldn't be reached. Vera had to ask Joe to use the master key to open Samuel's door. After they entered, Vera went straight to the drawer where Samuel kept his novel manuscript. She opened the unlocked drawer. The manuscript was still inside. She flipped through the manuscript and immediately made a horrifying discovery. The methods used by the killer were all written by Samuel in his novel. In other words, the killer was imitating the content of Samuel's novel to commit the crimes. This included using a fog net to kill people, sending packages to the victims, scattering wildflowers next to the bodies, and assaulting them in a place with water. Since this novel manuscript had not been published, it was impossible for anyone else to know its contents. From this, it could be concluded that the real killer of Luke and Lily could only be Samuel. The question was, what was his motive for the murders? Just as Vera and Joe were lost in thought, Samuel's landline phone suddenly rang. The caller was Felicity. From the voicemail she left, it's clear that feelings existed between the two of them. This voicemail also helped Vera understand things better. Samuel's motive for the murders was actually very simple. He wanted to marry Felicity, so the two of them planned to kill Luke and Lily with the intention of framing Peter. The reason they couldn't reach Samuel was because he had just kidnapped Laura. To rescue Laura as quickly as possible, Vera decided to find Felicity and force her to reveal Samuel's whereabouts. At Vera's urging, Joe hurriedly drove her to Peter's house. While complaining to him about being an idiot, she mentally reviewed the details of the case. Suddenly, she realized she was wrong again, and terribly wrong at that. If Samuel and Felicity wanted to eliminate Peter as an obstacle, they could have simply found an opportunity to kill him directly. Why would they go to the unnecessary trouble of killing 2 people at once to frame him? Furthermore, Felicity and Samuel probably didn't know about Peter and Lily's relationship beforehand. They certainly couldn't have known that Luke and Tommy had secretly taken the compromising photos. It wouldn't make sense for them to harm Luke and Lily to frame Peter. In fact, there weren't many people genuinely lying in this case. Gary lied to cover up his womanizing. Peter lied to hide his relationship with Lily. But there was one person who lied from beginning to end. Moreover, his motive was unclear. Clive. 6 months ago, he lied to the police, claiming Tommy had accidentally fallen into the water and died. But Laura clearly stated that Tommy and Luke had a dispute. Luke threw Tommy's camera into the sea. Tommy jumped in to retrieve it and was swept away by the current. Clive lied that there was no romantic relationship between Peter and Lily. Vera was almost fooled by him. She even considered the possibility that the person who harmed Luke and Lily wasn't the same person. More importantly, Clive had access to Samuel's unpublished novel manuscript and used it to create the crime. Clive had said that he had lived with his divorced mother since childhood. 6 months ago, his mother passed away from illness, and since then he had felt afraid of living alone. Therefore, he frequently stayed overnight at Peter and Samuel's house. Vera believes that while Clive was staying at Samuel's house, he read the novel manuscript and used its content to commit the crime. This would allow him to frame Samuel for the murder. When Vera first visited Samuel, he seemed confused and hid the novel manuscript in a drawer because he was aware that the murderer was imitating his novel. The fact that his phone was currently out of service could mean he was simply concentrating on writing his novel and didn't want to be disturbed by the outside world. Or perhaps he was just attending some kind of secret meeting. After figuring out the truth of the case, Vera's next task was to find Clive and rescue Laura. This would clarify why Clive lied and committed murder. But where was he now? Vera thought of Samuel's novel manuscript. According to the novel's description, the killer would commit the 3rd murder in a tower, and within a 10-kilometer radius, there was only one abandoned stone tower on the coast. Vera decided to go there with Joe. When they arrived, they indeed saw Clive tied up Laura there. He was in a state of madness. After seeing Vera and Joe, he confessed his motive for the crime. It turned out that not only did Lily adore Peter, but Clive worshipped him like a god. Especially after his mother's death 6 months earlier, he had unconsciously come to regard Peter as his only support. Deep down, Clive considered Peter not only a father figure and friend, but also a guiding light on his academic and artistic path. However, 6 months prior, while at the beach, Clive had inadvertently witnessed Peter and Lily engaging in illicit activities in their seaside home. Lily was kneeling on the ground, serving Peter submissively. This sight disgusted Clive immensely. He couldn't believe Peter could do such a vile thing. For a long time afterward, he went alone to the beach to observe Peter and Lily, his heart burning with an indescribable hatred. Worse still, Tommy had inadvertently captured their intimate encounter on camera, along with Clive secretly watching them. Later, Tommy, after a dispute with Luke, jumped into the sea and was swept away by the strong current. Clive then assumed the role of a witness and provided false testimony to the police, thus absolving Luke of any responsibility for Tommy's death. The purpose of this act was to get Luke to keep Peter and Lily's affair a secret, as well as the secret of him secretly watching them. Although Luke was forced to agree to Clive's conditions, after Tommy's death he was consumed by guilt. He felt ashamed for escaping legal punishment and public condemnation, and blamed Clive for it. Especially recently, Luke had encountered Clive several times. He went to the beach to commemorate his close friend Tommy. Each time, Luke glared at Clive and cursed him as a shameless scoundrel. After Clive killed Luke, he inadvertently learned that Lily intended to rent Peter's beachfront house, the place where Peter and Lily had their secret affair. Clive immediately suspected Lily was using this to blackmail Peter. To protect Peter's reputation, he decisively used a similar tactic to kill Lily. Clive became suspicious and believed that Laura had also learned his and Peter's secret from Luke, which is why he followed Samuel's novel's plot, kidnapping Laura and bringing her here to kill her. During the kidnapping, Davy tried to save her, so Clive killed Davy as well. As Vera suspected, Clive was imitating Samuel's novel to commit the crime with the intention of framing her. After explaining his motive, Clive dragged Laura to the top of the abandoned stone tower, intending to die with her. Luckily, Joe seized the opportunity to climb to the top, circle around behind Clive, and save Laura at the last moment. Clive, however, fell from the top of the tower into the sea and lost his life. The film ends here. See you in the next videos.